This is the story of my challenging experiences with my overbearing mother-in-law and my indifferent husband who failed to stand up for me. I will use pseudonyms in my account for privacy reasons. Let's just say my name is Eloise, my husband's name is Grant, and my mother-in-law's name is Adeline. My grandmother Madeline, a crucial pillar of support, is also a significant part of this story. Initially, Jonathan was a decent boyfriend, and I was head over heels in love with him. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate to accept. However, marriage revealed a different side of our relationship. I quickly noticed warning signs, particularly Grant's excessive attachment to his mother, Adeline, who had a strong influence over him. Adeline started causing trouble from the moment she moved in with us. One day, she entered the room with some documents and demanded, "Eloise, you need to sign these papers immediately. It's for your own good." Puzzled, I asked, "What are these papers, Adeline?" "It's a rock-solid prenuptial agreement," she replied. "It states that in the event of a divorce, neither of you can claim each other's assets. Sign it now." Shocked, I responded, "Did you arrange a prenup without discussing it with us?" "This is humiliating, Adeline. Why would you do this?" "I made this agreement to protect my son," she insisted. "You make much less than he does, and this house belongs to him. We can't trust you not to go after his wealth if you two split up. I'm not the villain you're making me out to be, Adeline. This is absurd. I refuse to sign a prenup on the spot like this. I'm offended you didn't even consult us." To my surprise, Jonathan chimed in, "Actually, I knew about the prenup. It's not a big deal, Eloise. If you're not after my money, you shouldn't have a problem signing it." I was stunned to learn that Adeline and Jonathan had discussed this without my knowledge. It wasn't about the money. I wasn't with Jonathan for financial gain. In fact, I had a sizable inheritance coming my way, something I hadn't shared with Jonathan yet. Over the following days, Jonathan and I argued constantly while Adeline continued to verbally berate me. It was a distressing time, but thankfully, my grandmother Madeline was there to provide the emotional support I desperately needed. After deciding not to sign the prenuptial agreement immediately, I sought advice from my grandmother. She listened carefully as I explained the situation, and then asked me with concern, "Honey, are you sure you want to marry this man? It seems like he and his mother are already teaming up against you, and you two aren't even married yet." I sighed, "It's just this one issue, Grandma. I really love Grant, and I believe he loves me too. I can't imagine being with anyone else. He's genuinely a good person at heart. If you're set on marrying him, then I think you should agree to the prenup," Grandma advised thoughtfully. "I'll have my lawyer look over the terms to ensure they are fair. But I have one condition: you mustn't reveal that your grandparents are millionaires." Curious, I asked, "Why shouldn't I tell them about our family wealth?" "Eloise, you're seeing things through rose-tinted glasses," Grandma replied wisely. "Your grandfather and I worked hard for our fortune, and I won't have someone taking advantage of you." "Okay, Grandma. I haven't told them anything about our wealth, and I won't, just as you've asked. Jonathan is a decent man. I'm sure if his mother oversteps, he'll stand by his wife." Unfortunately, my trust was misplaced. Jonathan turned out to be far from the supportive husband I expected, and his mother was even worse. Reluctantly, I signed the prenup, and soon after we married, Adeline's true nature emerged. She began to abuse me regularly, verbally and even physically at times. I'm ashamed of the specifics, but I will share one pivotal incident. One evening, after a long day at work, Adeline burst into my room with a smirk and thrust a heavy bag of laundry at me, demanding I wash it. I didn't protest. Resisting would only result in more harassment, as she would complain to Grant, leading to further verbal abuse from both of them. This had become my daily reality. As I carried the bag down the hallway, Adeline deliberately tripped me. I fell hard, injuring my ankle and crying out in pain. Adeline just laughed and walked away. After I managed to put an ice pack on my swollen ankle, I called Grant. "Grant, I fell and hurt my ankle because your mother tripped me," I told him, my voice filled with pain and frustration. "Don't make up lies about my mom, Eloise. She would never do that. You're just trying to find a way to kick her out and get out of doing chores. Stop lying and defaming my mom," he accused without a hint of concern for my injury. That moment crystallized the harsh reality of my situation. Jonathan would never stand up for me against his mother, no matter how blatant the abuse became. It was a turning point in our marriage, leading me to reconsider my choices and the future I wanted for myself. I had reached my limit. "I'm not lying, Grant. Please, you have to believe me," I pleaded over the phone, my voice tinged with desperation. "Don't waste my time, Eloise. Go back and do the chores my mom gave you." "I don't want to hear another complaint from you," Jonathan retorted and then simply hung up. He never stood up for me, always making it seem as though I was the problem. I usually kept quiet because I didn't want to drive him away, but this time, something inside me snapped. In secret, I had been seeing a therapist, a decision supported by my grandmother. The emotional toll of enduring constant mistreatment was overwhelming, and my therapist had begun to help me see the necessity of escaping this toxic environment. The situation with Adeline and Jonathan was spiraling out of control, and I was nearing my breaking point. Adeline's next move only fueled my resolve. She sent me a series of vile text messages asserting that I deserved her harsh treatment, and confidently claiming that Jonathan would never side against her. Furious and fed up, I resolved to take action, to not just escape, but to make them realize the gravity of their actions. The moment for change came unexpectedly. My beloved grandmother passed away. While I was heartbroken, there was a bittersweet relief knowing her suffering had ended, and she was at peace, perhaps reunited with my grandfather. Throughout this difficult time, Jonathan was absent. He didn't assist with the funeral arrangements, nor did he even attend the service. However, things took a bizarre turn when Jonathan learned that I had inherited $410 million from my grandparents. Suddenly, his demeanor changed. He became unusually attentive. The next day, I encountered yet another shock. Adeline was at the foot of my bed, giving me a creepily sweet look. "What are you doing here, Adeline?" I asked, bewildered by her presence and the way she stared at me while I slept. "I came early to help you with chores. I made you tea, it's right beside your bed." "I ordered a special batch just for you," she replied, her tone overly sugary. "But why were you sitting in my room while I was sleeping?" "It's really creepy, Adeline," I insisted, my discomfort growing. "I was trying to massage your feet, Eloise. I remember you hurt them carrying my laundry. I thought maybe I could help ease some of the soreness," she explained, as if her actions were perfectly normal. "You literally tripped me that day, Adeline. How dare you come here and act like you're trying to help? Do you have no shame?" I confronted her, my anger flaring. "Oh, no need to be so dramatic, it was just an honest mistake. I didn't know you would fall, or that the laundry bag was that heavy. I've already massaged your foot and made up for it, haven't I?" she retorted, dismissing the severity of her actions. At that moment, I knew things had to change. With my inheritance secured and my grandmother's wise words echoing in my memory, I began to plan my exit, not just from this house, but from the toxic cycle that had consumed my life. I was determined to reclaim my independence and find a way to live free from manipulation and abuse. "If you think massaging my foot makes up for how you've treated me, you're delusional. Adeline, get out of my room. I can't stand to look at you right now," I said firmly, my voice filled with a mix of anger and exhaustion. "All right, I'll be in the kitchen making breakfast. You don't need to worry about anything. I'll take care of everything, and make sure Jonathan has everything he needs too. Just take your time and freshen up," Adeline replied in a sickeningly sweet tone, leaving the room with an unsettling spring in her step. Her sudden change in behavior was disorienting. Even as I lay there, I felt like she had invaded my privacy and was acting completely unhinged. It was clear that money could drive people to extreme actions. Adeline was living proof. Jonathan must have filled her in about my inheritance, prompting this bizarre attempt at a change of heart. However, neither Jonathan nor Adeline knew that they wouldn't see a cent of my fortune. I had already made arrangements to ensure that. With renewed determination, I got out of bed and dressed in my best outfit. It was a day of reckoning, and I wanted to look the part. My therapy sessions had bolstered my confidence, and I was ready to stand up for myself. Clutching my bag, which contained some critical documents, I headed to the kitchen. Today was the day I would set things right. Upon entering the kitchen, I found Jonathan and Adeline chatting quietly, their faces lighting up with greedy smiles upon seeing me. Jonathan pulled out a chair for me while Adeline busied herself with fixing me a plate. "Why did you make breakfast today? I could have managed on my own." Jonathan usually complains when anyone else does something around here, I remarked, my tone light, but edged with irony. "It's no trouble at all, Eloise. I'm happy to do this for you," Jonathan chimed in quickly, his voice overly cheerful. "Yes, it's just breakfast. My mom can handle this for you from now on. You won't have to lift a finger until we sell this house and move into a mansion. We'll even get a housekeeper until then. My mother can take care of all the chores, and I'll help her," Adeline added, her tone suggesting a poorly disguised attempt at flattery. "You think buying my medications is a waste of money, but suddenly hiring a housekeeper is affordable. And how exactly do you plan on buying a mansion? Have you started robbing banks?" I asked sarcastically, letting my disbelief show. "Don't be ridiculous. We don't need to worry about money now, you just inherited a huge amount from your grandmother. We are essentially millionaires now. Your inheritance will be enough for all of us," Jonathan replied, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Their blatant display of entitlement and assumption over my inheritance was the last straw. It was time to reveal my plans and take back control of my life, ensuring that my hard-earned inheritance would be used according to my wishes, not theirs. Barely a day had passed since I received my inheritance, and already Jonathan and Adeline were weaving dreams about how they'd spend it. Their sudden shift from indifference to eagerness was almost comical. "Yeah, I've been thinking about quitting my job," Jonathan mused aloud, barely containing his excitement. "I'm burnt out anyway. Maybe we could take a vacation, have some fun. What do you say?" I couldn't help but burst into laughter, stunned by their audacity. It was as if a single day of pretending to be caring could erase the years of neglect and manipulation they had put me through. My laughter seemed to unsettle them, making them squirm under the weight of their own ludicrous plans. "My God, it's only been one day since I got my inheritance, and look how quickly you've changed your tune. Money really does make a difference, doesn't it?" I mocked. "Let's not dredge up the past now. We had no idea you were about to come into such good fortune. We would have treated you better if we knew," Jonathan added, trying to justify their behavior. "Yeah, you shouldn't keep secrets from your husband and in-laws, Eloise. That was sneaky of you," Adeline chimed in, her tone patronizing. "And what should we do with all this money?" I was thinking of a house, a mansion or a villa, perhaps. Maybe even a penthouse to suit our new status. We are millionaires now, after all. All my friends will be so jealous. Listening to their banter, I slowly pulled out the documents I had concealed in my folder. Adeline and Grant's eyes lit up, mistaking my gesture as an indication that I was about to officially share my windfall with them. Their faces were filled with anticipation, but they were in for a surprise. Holding the papers firmly in my hand, I corrected them. "Actually, let me clarify something for you both. We are not millionaires. I am the millionaire here. This money is mine, received through my inheritance. But you got the money, and we share everything. We are married, after all, so you should be sharing with me," Jonathan argued, his voice a blend of entitlement and desperation. Yes, yes, and as your mother-in-law and the only surviving family right now, you should share the money with me as well. We are family, after all. You are my daughter just as much as Jonathan is my son, Adeline added, trying to lay her claim. I couldn't help but smirk at the irony. It's interesting how I've suddenly become your daughter, Adeline. Just yesterday, I was nothing but the witch your son married. Anyway, don't get too carried away. We won't be family for much longer, not that we ever really were. What do you mean, Eloise? Grant's voice faltered, a note of panic threading through his question. I met his gaze steadily, ready to reclaim my life and my freedom from their manipulative grasp. I'm your mother-in-law, so I am family, Adeline argued with a tone of entitlement. How would you be my mother-in-law if I'm no longer married to your son? Once Jonathan is no longer my husband, you will be nothing to me, I responded calmly, my decision firm. What do you mean, Eloise? Why wouldn't I be your husband anymore? What's going on? Grant's confusion was apparent, his voice tinged with desperation. I've filed for divorce, I declared, the words resonating with finality. I did it the day after my grandmother passed away. I can't stay with you any longer, Grant. You're a terrible husband and you don't deserve that title. With that, I tossed the divorce papers onto the table for them to see. Jonathan and Adeline quickly scanned the documents, their expressions shifting from disbelief to panic as they read. Clearly, they hadn't anticipated that I would take such a decisive step. Why have you filed for divorce? This doesn't make any sense. You think I'm weak enough to stay in an abusive marriage forever? I challenged them, my tone laced with incredulity. Why are you surprised, Grant? I told you this was coming the very day Adeline tripped me. And now, you're still stuck in the past, I continued, my frustration growing. I've apologized for that already, and it's done. I can't change what happened. You need to be more forgiving. This isn't a big enough issue to warrant a divorce. Mom has already made amends for that, Jonathan replied, trying to downplay his mother's actions. So, Adeline confesses to tripping me, and all you do is tell me to get over it. Listen carefully, both of you. I'm divorcing you, and you won't get a cent of my inheritance. I can't believe I ever fell in love with someone as vile as you, Grant. I'm ashamed I tried so hard to please someone like you, Adeline. But this abuse ends now. We are definitely getting a divorce, and we can do this the easy way or the hard way, I stated firmly, my resolve clear. Suddenly, Jonathan and Adeline's demeanor shifted to anger. They likely didn't appreciate being called out so directly on their behavior. Realizing I had already filed for divorce, they knew I was serious. It wasn't just a threat to manipulate them into changing their ways. They were now forced to recognize that they couldn't control me or my decisions any longer. What's the use of divorcing me, Eloise? You have more money now because of your inheritance. It's a marital asset. I'll get half of it anyway, Jonathan argued, grasping at straws. You might think you'll get half, but much of it will end up being spent on lawyers, I retorted, already well informed and prepared for the legal battles ahead. I was ready to protect my assets and my peace, no matter the cost. Did you forget about the prenup you and your mother insisted on? The one Adeline was so adamant we sign. I reminded them coolly. Realization hit them like a ton of bricks. They had orchestrated their own downfall. Back then, they wanted to protect themselves, convinced no sane woman would tolerate their behavior indefinitely. The prenup was their safety net, designed to let them act without consequence. But in their short-sightedness, they never anticipated that I would someday inherit a fortune. The prenup was a long time ago. I'll talk to a lawyer and see what we can do. We are not letting you walk away with all that money, Jonathan blustered, a hint of panic in his voice. You're using this to threaten us, aren't you? You can't do anything, Eloise. We'll take your money and do as we please, Adeline sneered, trying to intimidate me. So, you're planning to challenge me in court? I asked, my tone even, unflinching. Don't worry, Eloise, we will make this very difficult for you. You can't just decide to get a divorce on your own. You need my signature too, remember that. Jonathan said, his voice tinged with spite. Really, Grant? You're going to deliberately make this process harder for me. That's fine. I'm prepared for everything. I have plenty of leverage of my own, I replied, my confidence unshaken. What do you mean, Eloise? Adeline's voice wavered, a trace of fear creeping in. Adeline, remember how you confessed to tripping me and how you've abused me in those texts. I'll be using them to file a police report. That should be interesting, shouldn't it? I stated matter-of-factly. No, you wouldn't, you can't do that to me. That's impossible. I'll just delete all the texts, Adeline stammered, panic setting in. Don't worry, Adeline. I've saved all the texts and forwarded them to some friends for safekeeping. I'm perfectly capable of reporting you to the police. And I can also demonstrate how Jonathan knew about the abuse and did nothing. This will certainly not look good for you in divorce court, I explained, my words leaving no room for doubt. Suddenly, Adeline and Jonathan were tripping over themselves to apologize, their tone shifting drastically as they realized the seriousness of the situation. They thought I had forgotten about the abuse, but I had been biding my time, gathering evidence for the right moment. As they scrambled to backtrack, I collected the divorce papers and made my way to the door. Don't leave, Eloise. Let's sit down and talk about this. We can handle this like adults, not make any hasty decisions, Jonathan pleaded, desperation clear in his voice. You have to stay. Where will you even go? Let's discuss this, Adeline added, trying to sound conciliatory. I'm moving into my grandmother's house. It's already been transferred to my name. I'll be living there while we sort out the divorce. I'm taking the papers with me so you can't tamper with them, I said, stepping out of the house, empowered and resolute, leaving them to stew in the mess they had created. As I left the house, I made it clear to Jonathan and Adeline not to think about tampering with any of my belongings. I've taken pictures of everything, I warned them, do not damage or dispose of anything. Despite their attempts to stop me, my friend was already waiting outside. I hopped into her car, and we drove off, leaving Jonathan and Adeline watching helplessly from the door. Settling into my new place, I immediately contacted a moving company to transport my belongings from the house. In the following months, Jonathan and Adeline tried everything they could to change my mind. I remained firm, reminding them that I was ready to involve the police since Jonathan was stalling on signing the divorce papers. Eventually, Jonathan consulted with a lawyer who confirmed that the prenup was ironclad, leaving him no room to maneuver. Under the pressure of my threats, and the very real possibility of his mother facing legal consequences, Jonathan reluctantly signed the divorce papers. He realized there was no chance of reconciliation, and that his actions had irreparably damaged our relationship. The fallout between Jonathan and Adeline was immediate. Jonathan blamed Adeline for the demise of our marriage, convinced that her interference had cost him a fortune. Their relationship deteriorated rapidly, leading to incessant arguments. Ultimately, Jonathan evicted Adeline from the house. With no financial support from Grant, and having been dependent on him for so long, Adeline found herself homeless and eventually sought refuge in a shelter for homeless women. I made sure to spread the word about the kind of people Jonathan and Adeline were, leading to their social isolation. Meanwhile, I embraced my new life with open arms. I continued to live in my grandmother's house, which held so much sentimental value for me. From my inheritance, I donated a substantial sum to women's support centers and planned further contributions to such causes. The remainder of my money was carefully invested, securing a stable future for myself and any future family I might have. I still maintained my job, as staying active and engaged was important to me. Life has been good, and I remain optimistic about the future. I look forward to the day I meet someone who truly deserves my love and companionship, someone who respects and values me as much as I do them.